It's time for the Wrestling Observer Extra.
One more time for old time's sake.
With Dave Meltzer, right here on The Law. Live audio wrestling.
And let's go. We're now smoking with the best.
Welcome back. It's hour 2 of The Law, an hour later tonight. But we had to move Dave Meltzer down a little bit. But he is here, 1 a.m. Eastern. Not so late your time,
No.
Dave. Talking about Payback tonight. It's the first pay-per-view of a new era,
A
Dave.
new era.
Seems a lot like the old era is the conclusion we've come to.
Same as the old boss.
It felt like it was hilarious watching the Vince McMahon thing because he's talking about how Raw always reinvents itself.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is everybody's complaint is that Raw is always the same.
Yeah.
And reinventing itself is going back to the same angle they've done for the last 20 years, which is the McMahon family,
Yep.
being the center, piece of everything. I mean, when they went in there and what they did essentially, the guys, Roman Reigns and AJ Styles had a very good main event, but at the end they were secondary characters to Shane and Stephanie.
Yep, that's exactly how I felt, Dave. I felt that whole main event and all the work that those two guys put into that got pushed aside because they ended up becoming the focus.
Yeah. And, it was just like this whole thing of this long storyline that was very predictable, with a cheesy count out where you knew that when Shane did the first one that Stephanie was going to have to do one.
Yep.
And then by the end, it was just like, it felt like a TNA main event to me. In the old days where Jeff Jarrett would overbook stuff and they would just have a bunch of run-ins and a bunch of this and a bunch of that. And then when it was over, it was kind of like you'd already lost focus of, it didn't matter who won and lost because, whether the match was good or not, so many things were taken away that
it didn't matter at all who won because right before Roman Reigns has even left the ring, we found out he's got to have a rematch at the next pay-per-view. They couldn't even wait till tomorrow to announce the next main event. So it's
I don't mind them actually getting ahead of themselves, but yeah, it is kind of ridiculous that you do a no DQ and no countout match, and then as soon as it's over, you go, we're going to do a rematch, and it's going to be like an Extreme Rules match, which I guess is no DQ and no countout.
It's still the same thing. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Overall, Dave, tonight's pay-per-view, what'd you come out of it thinking?
The matches were good. I was liking the show up until really the last match, and the last match was very well worked, but I just thought that, I guess the last thing left a bad taste in my mouth in the sense it was like the new Raw is going to be Shane and Stephanie fighting each other. That's the answer to ratings is instead of coming up with something new, we're going to come up with something old. So I was left with kind of a bad taste, but as far as the matches went, I mean every match was good that was on the pay-per-view other than the first one, and and that was an unfortunate situation.
Right. What about? How did you feel about the rehashing the Montreal screw job yet once again? I can't believe if they got this huge writing team and this is all they can come up with.
Yeah, it's their idea of innovation. Because they've only done it 100 times.
Yeah. And plus, I mean, you got Bret Hart right there. It's almost like they're rubbing it in his face.
I doubt. At this stage of the game, he's gone through a lot where I really don't think he cares.
Right.
But I think in their mind it was like the deal is it was a way to build a rematch for Natalya and Charlotte. So the whole idea of this match was to build a rematch. So I get that, and I would just think that you could come up with a cleverer way than that. So yeah, I felt that I felt Natalya was really doing a great job of selling, and the match was kind of good. In fact, it was getting really good, and then it just ended really flat. Mm-hmm. And it felt like it ended 5 minutes too early too.
I actually felt that in comparison to what these two have done before, I mean, we saw the Roadblock match, which I thought was good, and that match wasn't even as good as 2 years ago with their 2014 match in NXT. I thought tonight that they really, compared to what they've done in the past, weren't up to spec for the two of them.
I think if they had 5 more minutes and a better finish, they probably would have ended up being close to the same level. Maybe not. I don't know. But with that finish and they had less time, yeah, it wasn't as good as the Toronto match was great. So, and it was the thing with the Toronto match. It felt to me that in the Toronto match they had more freedom to do what they wanted. In this one, I mean, but they did do some good stuff in this one. But it was just, I think that you kind of, when it's over, you kind of forget about the good stuff because the only thing that you remember is the finish.
It's the
whereas in
stupid
the other
ending.
matches,
Yeah.
the finish came from the good stuff.
Right.
All the good stuff here was irrelevant to the finish.
Right. Yeah, that's a good analysis. Yes.
Looking at the main event, it is secondary, but we're still continuing on with this. We know that Styles and Reigns are going towards this next match in only 3 weeks at the next pay-per-view. The bullet, we were talking about, Gallows and Anderson and their ties to AJ. I feel as though this is pretty much solidified now that they are together as opposed to breaking apart. Mouth is still unsure. What is your feeling on where this troop is headed?
I'm still unsure too. I think that we'll have a better. We have to go through where we do the 6-man tag, which I would be surprised. I would kind of expect maybe on Raw tomorrow, and then from there we, obviously go to the next show, and then for the finish of the next show we'll see where they're going. I don't expect anything to change. I'm not.
I like the idea that they're teasing it for a while anyways.
Here's the thing. If they're going to all be together, then AJ's got to go heel. I'm not sure if that's the right move right now, although the fact that they beat AJ on this show and they're going to beat him again on the next show, at that point, maybe then he should go heel. And if that's the case, it's like I figured that either the Bullet Club screws him next show by accident and they break up, or they all go heel after he loses. That's kind of I think those are the choices.
The only thing, though, Dave, I would see with that is that if AJ goes heel, they're not going to boo him, though.
And also, who does he go against? Because he's going to go against Reigns again. But you're right, AJ could do anything, and when it's against Reigns, he's getting cheered.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's true.
So I don't know.
Also,
maybe that's their maybe you don't know and I don't know, but they think they do know, and maybe and they're going to try it anyway. But I think maybe they've already learned that AJ's getting booed. I don't know.
Yeah,
it's fun. It's funny.
It is. It's a weird situation.
They can manipulate everything, and usually they can. This one they haven't been able to.
Outside of the ring this week, Dave, there was a situation with Ric Flair at an airport. This just seemed to get blown way out of proportion, and Rick was on the pay-per-view tonight, looked fine, performed fine. Has this blown over?
Completely, because if it hadn't blown over, he wouldn't have been on the show.
Right.
So there was a period where, when it first came out, I don't think that they were very happy because they don't want their talent in that situation. But I think the key was when the police said that he wasn't drunk. It was kind of like that's the end of the story at that point, because if he just tripped and fell, that's it. There's no story essentially other than he fell.
There you go.
Well, that's
simple.
Good.
Yeah.
Also, big news this week. Eric Young popping up on the NXT tapings. Do we know anything about Eric Young's contract? Is he just going to be a player down there, or is this one of the what was talked about with James Storm that never came to materialize, but kind of a player-coach scenario?
Yeah, I think my impression is this is similar to James Storm in that he's there, and I don't know that they have a deal with James Storm. Obviously they he went back to TNA. I think that with Eric Young, I think it's less likely he's going back to TNA. So, they put him on. They beat him right away. So it's like if he doesn't come back, they already beat him.
It doesn't matter.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So if they do business or not, I think that's probably to be evaluated.
So there's no contract at this point. There's no.
I haven't heard of any contract. No.
And Bobby Roode, who I'd heard was backstage, did not appear in the last set of tapings. Though, do we know the status of Roode?
The impression I got is they're pretty close, but there's no deal yet.
And once again, that's looked upon as a player-coach type thing.
Yeah, and for him, I would be surprised if it didn't happen because, he's really talented and he's probably one of the right guys for that role. And there's no place else for him to go. I mean, with Eric, there's no place else. But I don't know that. I know that they were higher on Eric because I think that they thought he had better comedy skills. So I think they could both end up in there. In NXT. But in NXT, it's fine. NXT, you don't have the upside when it comes to the money that you would have on the main roster, but there's also. There's good things about being in NXT as well. I think that you're not booked to booked into oblivion at the same. They're a lot better at booking talent.
It's quite
Like
funny.
Baron Corbin.
Well, yeah, you know what? I was just going to bring that scenario up because Baron Corbin and a lot of other guys have just been pulled up to the main roster. Enzo and Cass, Vaudevillains, Apollo Crews. NXT is rather depleted at this point, and yet one of the first guys we see thrown into the mix is Eric Young and talk of Bobby Roode. I find it funny that they have all these people in development, and what do we get from development? No Way Jose. So where's the new talent that WWE is supposed to be developing at the Performance Center?
We have Nakamura as the big star down there. That's weird to me when I watch NXT because Nakamura felt like more of a star than anybody on the show tonight. And the NXT touring shows are filled with the Johnny Gargano and Ciampa and all these guys that have been around for 10 years and are good wrestlers already. It's different. It's just different. And I think that gets in the way of development of guys because when the people say they haven't developed anyone, that's not true because obviously the women and everything came from started from scratch there. But when you compare the number of stars that they've developed as compared to OVW with like 20th of the budget, it doesn't look so good. But it's camouflaged by the fact that people think it's fantastic because they bring in Austin Aries and they bring in Bobby Roode and they bring in Samoa Joe and they bring in Johnny Gargano and Nakamura and you have a great product.
Mm-hmm. So it's almost sacrificing what it actually is, development for the sake of putting together a good secondary touring brand.
Another brand.
It's an interesting thing. It gets it's tremendous for the PR for Triple H because what it is he gets tremendous PR for putting on these great shows, but he's under no pressure to make money with the shows. I mean, can you imagine if Paul Lee never had to make money, never did, but if Paul Lee could go forever and lose money, I mean, he could have put on the greatest shows in the world if he never had to worry about making money at the end.
Right.
Let's just touch on the going on Conor McGregor scenario.
He's still at it.
17 hours ago, he posted on Facebook, nobody gives an F about these other fights until this one is settled. Cut the BS, run it back. #RealFight. McGregor is not on UFC 200. It has been announced that it's Jones versus Cormier. What's he pushing for here now?
I think he's pushing not to lose the Diaz fight. I think he really wants that fight bad and hopeful that he gets it on 201. And I think he probably will because, it makes the most sense. And, UFC's, they've punished him and they've like, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's like they proved their point, so they don't need to prove it anymore. And, he came off bad. But at the end of the day, he's still the biggest draw that they've got as long as Ronda Rousey's out and maybe long term because who knows how long Ronda Rousey's going to fight. So.
And that's it. And I mean, as big as UFC 200 will be, you still need something afterwards. And I mean, any show that he fights on is going to be a big show.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think, depending on where and what the plans are for August and September, I figure that's where, that's where Conor and Diaz, fit in. And there, I think he's really fighting to make that match and not to have to sit and wait for the Aldo and Frankie Edgar match.
Right.
It's not as big a money match, and he knows it. Mm-hmm. And plus, there's no revenge for him on Aldo. He already beat Aldo. And Edgar, win or lose, he doesn't really prove anything, whereas with Diaz, I think he needs to prove something to himself.
Sure.
So, he's pushing forward, and he should get it. I mean, I don't think they should punish him any longer.
UFC 200 is Jones versus Cormier. We saw a strange version, a rusty version of John Jones in the ring versus OSP last week. Do you think Cormier has any sort of chance here?
There's always a chance. I'm not favoring him, but the last fight made it tough. I mean, it's just hard after that last fight, and he wasn't blown out. I mean, he won one round. There were two rounds that were somewhat close. There was one round that Jones won pretty solid, and two of them I think he won pretty solid. He was the better guy on the first night, and Cormier's getting older, and he's moving into his prime.
Right.
But the Jones that fought OSP, I don't think was as good as the Jones that fought DC.
Definitely not.
DC would have fought him on that night. God, I think that night it would have been a hell of a fight.
Yeah.
And DC, think DC would have a chance to win. I think Rumble Johnson would have a chance to win on that night. Now,
we'll see.
Will Jones be the same Jones in his next fight?
Right.
I think he probably won't be.
Yeah.
I think whatever it was that kind of made him slow to pull the trigger and things like that. I think he's got that genius coach, Greg Jackson, and they're going to figure out what's wrong, and that's a scary proposition because, even when he was making mistakes, he won 5 rounds and was never really challenged.
That's true. Dave, what's in the Observer this week?
Well, I guess we're going to find out on Tuesday.
Okay,
I don't know what's in the Observer this week. Coverage of the New Japan show and coverage of the New Japan show on Monday night or Tuesday morning, and then coverage of this show and whatever they do on Raw, and that'll be the main stuff.
All right, good stuff.
And I do have a story on the declining male audience of WWE.
Yes.
Because it's declined a lot more than I thought.
Interesting.
So it's actually pretty scary when you look at the numbers. Hopefully, this new era, this new era, it's like I don't see how this turns it around.
No.
God, if I turn it around, I'm going to turn it around by going backwards.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's too bad because the last 2-3 weeks with Shane doing it by himself was fine.
The TV's been good.
Yeah,
but it was building to this. This was always the idea. And who knows? Maybe that conflict will be better. But it was just even if it is. It's going to be really hard to get guys over because they're going to be the stars. And that's really been the case for several years. And that's, I think, the problem. You to really turn this thing around, it's not going to be Stephanie McMahon. It's not going to be Shane McMahon. It's going to have to be another Steve Austin. And there's not going to be another Steve Austin. Roman Reigns will never be that guy. And there's not going to be that guy. There's not even going to be a Daniel Bryan, I don't think, as long as everything is focused on Shane and Stephanie.
And that's what it's going to be, and we're going to watch that tomorrow night and talk to you next week at this 1 hour earlier. Back to regular time next week, Dave.
Okay, have a great week.
You too, Dave Meltzer. WrestlingObserver.com is where you can find all of the Observer stuff, his podcast, etc.